This video was brought to you by Established Titles, who are currently having a massive holiday sale with an additional 10% off any purchase you make with the discount code Jay'sReviews. Now, what is Established Titles? Well, through them, you can buy as little as 1 square foot of dedicated land for yourself that you will either be the lord or lady of, a historic Scottish custom. It would make for a pretty funny gift that I don't think anyone could forget. I mean, you can literally have your credit card or plane tickets and things of that nature changed to have lord and lady written on them. While it is a funny gift idea, or just a neat thing to do for yourself, it does have a purpose. Established Titles is committed to planting a tree with every order for the sake of protecting the woodlands of Scotland and other areas, as well as supporting global charities like One Tree Planted and Trees for the Future to help with their worldwide afforestation efforts. When I first caught wind of this, I was thinking it would seem random in comparison to the other types of products I've worked with, this being a gaming and media channel, but my thought was this. Established Titles is a good cause with fun perks. Take this certificate you get, for example. I keep a wall full of art and other memorabilia and mementos, and now this certificate is one of them, never taken it down. So I hope that explanation has piqued your curiosity. If it has, go to establishedtitles.com/Jay'sReviews and use promo code Jay'sReviews to save an extra 10% off your purchase. And do it soon as the holiday sale is running as we speak. Thanks again to Established Titles for sponsoring this video. Now, let's get to your regularly scheduled Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles video. Welcome back to the 2003 Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles retrospective. This is the 5th in an 8-part series where we'll obviously be tackling Season 5. An interesting season for a wide variety of reasons. It's a time sink, but if you haven't, I'd recommend watching parts 1 through 4 before this one because Season 5 was the intended culmination of everything the series had done thus far. But to dive into Season 5, what makes it so interesting, you ask? Well, I hope you're asking that because I'm about to tell you either way. There was a lot of confusion in the last video's comments regarding Season 5 because I called it the lost season of the 2003 TMNT series. Some people had already seen it, some had never heard of it and stopped watching the show after Season 4. Let me explain. Which also requires a recap of Season 4. The main plotline of Season 4 that leads to Season 5 is when Agent Bishop's fake alien invasion from the beginning of the season caused an ooze to leak into the sewers of New York that began an outbreak of mutations. Donatello was a victim of this, although his condition was worse because of the fact that for him it was a secondary mutation upon the one he already had from the Utrom ooze. Lots of great character moments came from this, but to focus on the story, the Turtles brought Don to Agent Bishop in the hopes that he had a cure. Thanks to Leatherhead and Dr. Stockman working together, a cure was made, but Bishop's price was that Leo, Raph, and Mikey had to break into the Foot HQ and steal an artifact called the Heart of Tengu from Karai, who had assumed the mantle of the Shredder following her adopted Utrom father's exile at the end of Season 3. The Heart of Tengu was something Karai and her father before her used to command the power of the Foot Mystics, whose true goal was to resurrect the true Shredder. Bishop is tricked into destroying the Heart of Tengu, which releases the Foot Mystics. Because of this, the Turtles are then captured in the season's final episode, Ninja Tribunal, by a group called the Ninja Tribunal, as they're going to train the Turtles and 4 other warriors, Joy, Adam, Tora, and Faraji, in preparation for the great evil that's coming. While Splinter and the Ancient One were going to go after the Turtles to save them. On April 15th of 2006, that was the note Season 4 went out on, as fans anxiously waited for the final chapter of this story that's been building for 3 years at this point. On July 29th of 2006, the next episode, Future Shell Shock, aired. An episode where the Turtles are all back in the lair with Master Splinter joking around with the TV remote as if nothing happened. And then they're all warped 100 years in the future where they spend the next 25 episodes. What happened here? Well, first, I can only speak from an American perspective on this, since I don't know what happened in other regions, but in America, the 12 episodes from Season 5, where the Turtles train with the Ninja Tribunal, the episodes we'll be talking about today, just got shelved. Future Shell Shock was actually the first episode of Season 6, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Fast Forward, which obviously takes place after the Ninja Tribunal season, meaning that if you watch Fast Forward after Season 5, there's nothing weird about the Turtles being back home. But why do this? This was for 2 reasons. First, look back at Season 4. This show was always somewhat serious, getting away with a lot of things the network, 4Kids, would not have allowed in other shows. But Season 4 was focused on heavier psychological themes than most kids' shows, while also showing more body horror than you might expect from the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. It was to the point where 4Kids never aired Season 4's 19th episode, Insane in the Membrane. The show was getting really dark, and it was something that both 4Kids and Playmates Toys were taking notice of. By their own admission, Playmates requested that the 2003 series go in a more lighthearted direction. Since these action cartoons are mostly funded by action figure sales, I imagine what the toy company wants is a big influence on what the show does. So that was why Fast Forward was created. They wanted a more lighthearted season, and they also wanted to increase interest in the show, which is, I imagine, the reason they had a big gimmick of the Turtles transporting to the future. As for Season 5, it was just as dark as the previous seasons because it was continuing that story, something that 4Kids and Playmates weren't that interested in anymore. So we just went from the end of Season 4 to the start of Season 6 ahead of schedule, but Mirage Studios did finish production on Season 5 with the intent to release it on a DVD. But those plans got screwed over when 4Kids signed on with Comcast for TMNT to be part of their video-on-demand service. In August of 2006, the first few Season 5 episodes were on there, but that partnership fell through for reasons that are still unknown to this day. As a result, mass confusion hit the audience over what the intended Season 5 is, which 4Kids claimed was Fast Forward because it was the 5th one to air, and it looked increasingly like the true Season 5 might never see the light of day. But then, in the year 2008, a couple months after Fast Forward / Season 6 aired its final episode, and many months before Season 7, Back to the Sewers was to begin airing, the fans were told that the episodes of Season 5 were unearthed at a vault in the 4Kids headquarters, and they were to begin airing in February of 2008 as they went all in promoting this. TMNT, The Lost Episodes, the epic finale to the story Season 4 set up. After it aired, we got the Ninja Tribunal DVD, which included the last episode of Season 4 and the 12 episodes of Season 5 in May of 2008. So finally, that saga wrapped up. Season 5 was no longer in limbo, it was an officially released part of the series. From what I gathered reading the comments on the past videos, opinions from fans on Season 5 are rather split. Many people have been hyped for this review since Season 1 dropped, considering it their favorite of the whole show, while others think it's one of the worst. As for myself, I'm somewhere in the middle of that. I think it's fantastic that the studio was able to give us this almost lost season of the show, but of the first 5 seasons, I think this one is easily the worst. But I don't dislike it. In fact, when I rewatched the show in 2020 and for this video series, I dreaded going into Season 5 because I remember it being really boring from the last time I watched the show back in 2015. But then I had a good time with it both last year and now. I think Season 5 is good, well above watchable. But I do think it's flawed for reasons I'll explain today. Season 5. It's an epic finale, but I also think it's the worst season of the show's original run. Let's explore why by taking it from the top. Episode 1, The Lap of the Gods, begins with a monologue about a serpent eating its own tail. Reminded me of whatever it was those Mega Man X6 commenters were going on about. But those were definitely donuts. Pretty cut and dry case. Anyway, like I was saying 1,077 words ago, the Turtles and 4 other people have been shanghaied by the Ninja Tribunal, who reveal themselves for the first time. Their names are Kan Shisho, Juto Shisho, Chikara Shisho, and Husomi Shisho. Each are masters in their own different ninjutsu areas like spirit, weapons, strength, and stealth. The heroes officially become the Acolytes of the Tribunal as they get amulets that represent their spiritual energy, as the training begins immediately. Donatello being the first one to activate his spiritual power by reading about it in the library. In the first episode, Splinter arrives with the Ancient One, who knows where the Tribunal Monastery is. The most interesting aspect of the early episodes is how Splinter has a serious beef with the Ninja Tribunal, which isn't explained at first. He just warns the Turtles to stick together now more than ever, while the Ancient One helps oversee the training that the Acolytes go through. And the training must be fast because the evil the Tribunal is protecting against will be resurrected soon as his servants quickly approach. It's the first 5 episodes I dread watching the most because for some reason my mind just remembers them going on for an eternity as we see the various lessons the group goes through. However, I think it's actually a good series of episodes as some characters are better with the lessons than others, Leo and Mikey consistently failing at most of the lessons. These two are interesting because I'd argue that Leo and Mikey are the 2 most talented turtles, but Leo just has a lot of trouble activating his spiritual energy, and Mikey has the problem he has had for the whole series. He's just not disciplined in general. Donatello read up about the spiritual stuff at the beginning, like I said, and Raph is good at tapping into his emotions, so that also makes sense. Raph being the first one to get a cool new spiritual weapon, which everyone except Leo gets. The fire weapon making thing just doesn't give him one. But Leo and Mikey both get cathartic moments of success, as Khan is teaching them about manifesting their spiritual avatars, the dragon being the most rare and powerful. Leo then manifests that one. Hisomi teaches a lesson where the group has to catch up with him on foot, which Mikey pulls off against everybody else.
I am never gonna hear the end of this.
I also like this part where Chikara has Mikey attack her with everything he's got, and this is the result.
Nice work, Mikey. I think you've got her on the ropes.
But the stakes are very high. At the end of episode 2, the group is on a mission to save an artifact and Leo pulls a maneuver with Faraji's weapon that almost kills him, but the Tribunal just asks why they didn't leave him behind.
Have you no compassion for those who would give their lives for you? You are no better than the snarling wretches who serve the evil one.
This being when the group finally learns what they're fighting against.
You and your sons deserve to know this. If we fail, the world will fall. Fall to him.
The Shredder?
We get more plot in Episode 3, Legend of the Five Dragons, and when I say plot, I mean prepare your butts for this absolute exposition dump. So Splinter's beef with the Tribunal is that before Master Yoshi left for America to protect the Utroms in New York, he sought out the help of the Tribunal, who just told him they don't give a damn about Chirel, the Utrom pretended to be the Shredder. They need to stay vigilant for the return of the real one. Splinter is so angry towards the Tribunal because if they had listened to Yoshi and helped the Utroms, then Chirel would never been able to kill Master Yoshi. But then the Turtles have to wonder the obvious question. What is going on here? The guy they spent 3 seasons trying to take out isn't legit? Well, no. The original Shredder was an ancient evil that manifested as a Tengu in ancient Japan. The Tengu Shredder was wreaking havoc all over the land until the Shogun enlisted the help of 5 legendary warriors, Kan, Chikara, Hisomi, Juto, and Oroku Saki. The 5 of them battled the Tengu Shredder, none as powerful as Saki, but when he went in for the kill, the Shredder appealed to Saki. If he let the spirit in his body, he'd have unlimited power. Saki accepted and became the Shredder himself, the fiercest warlord in history with his demonic powers. The remaining warriors studied and trained hard to gain the mystic powers to battle the Shredder, manifesting their own dragon avatars to defeat him. For the centuries since, they've kept guard over Saki's sarcophagus in the hopes he would never return. But to explain what this means for the rest of the show, Oroku Saki was a real person, the original Shredder. A couple hundred years after this, Chirel had forced the Utroms to crash land on Earth. He then learns of this story about the Shredder and Oroku Saki and assumes that identity as a human so that he could use the fear and respect surrounding the name for his own gain. Chirel was literally cosplaying as Saki for 1,000 years straight. It just so happens that they have the exact same voice too. And I don't mean that he synthesized Saki's voice, it's just the same voice. Lucky. This reveal makes sense to me. Chirel was a ruthless, murdering warlord across several planets. I can totally see him learning of Saki/Shredder and being like,
Ah, that is so me!
And just saying he's that person. This episode also delivers the backstory of the armor the Tribunal members wear. When you first see them, the Tribunal just looks like a bunch of Shredders with an upside-down foot logo as their own logo, which is what they wanted you to think, building up the mystery. Here, it's shown that the armor was made to battle the Tengu Shredder. This upside-down foot logo was the original the Tribunal had. But the original Saki, when he turned evil, flipped it upside down and that became the foot logo, the one that Chirel used for himself. Although the art design really messed up at the start of this episode. When Oroku Saki is first mentioned, we see him wearing the suit that Chirel had been seen wearing throughout the first 3 seasons of the show. They just reused the design, but the design shows the foot logo as we know it, but it shouldn't even exist at this point because he had yet to become the Shredder. That's a bit of a hole, but I won't call it a plot hole because that's an animation thing. There is a plot hole you could argue from this episode, but I think I'll save it when it becomes a little more explicit. On the whole, I think this show having such fleshed out lore is great. For a lot of people, adding an original Shredder on top of what was already there seems like an ass pull. But from where I'm sitting, they were already setting this Season 5 plot up as far back as the beginning of Season 4. All things that played off of story elements introduced in Season 3, which was building off of the story we've been following since the first episode. I feel like an ass pull has to come out of nowhere with no reasonable explanation. Such as Chirel coming back to life via biosites in Season 2. In my opinion, that's the lowest the story in this show gets in the first 5 seasons. For this, like I said, the first name drop of a true Shredder was 21 episodes prior to this, Bad Day. I guess that's just me. I suppose this is a retcon, but it's one that I think was done as gracefully as they could have. It's not like there would be a time where this would come up before. Literally, in my script I was about to say, although, if there was a demon this powerful, don't you think everyone would know about it? Well, that was the idea that Chirel had. He was quite literally saying he was Shredder, the original. I guess the confusion could come from the Turtles not knowing the history of their own worst enemy, but I guess, who would tell them? Not like they go to school. Well, one character could have told them, but again, I can touch on that later. While you could complain about this new Shredder lore, I won't. Instead, I'll complain about the aspect of Season 5 that really does bother me, and that would be the other 4 Acolytes. They get a significant amount of screen time while the training is going on. I just feel like they add absolutely nothing to the story. With Adam, they try to give him some character as he's into machines like Donatello and is also into Chikari Shisho, but the other 3 have literally no personality at all. No interests, no motivations, no funny lines or any of that. Tora thinks Mikey is weird, but that could literally be anybody. Faraji's honorable like Leo, and Joy just gets along with Raph, but besides that, I've got nothing. During Legends of the Five Dragons, it's Splinter and the Ancient One telling the Turtles about the original Shredder. The other 4 Acolytes are just not present. Do they even know who the Shredder is and why they're fighting him? They look surprised by the helmet reveal, but do they have anything to say about the Utrom Shredder? I have no idea because they're just 4 non-characters that fill up screen time. I was trying to think of why these characters exist, and I came to the conclusion that maybe it was so that the Turtles don't feel like the center of the universe, something this show has excelled at in the first 4 seasons. But for reasons we'll see later, this season already ruins that idea anyway. The other 4 Acolytes die in episode 5, which I was then thinking, well, at least this adds some stakes to the story. Maybe that was the point of their characters. But no, they come back to life in the last episode for the big battle, but don't even participate in the final battle where it's just the Turtles and Shredder. So I have to ask, what was the point here? I have also always hated how Leo never got a cool new weapon. When Faraji dies, he gives Leo his weapon, which is cool. Leo gets the weapon he probably would have gotten anyway and uses it to honor a fallen friend. But when he comes back, Leo gives it back and just uses his twin swords while the other Turtles have cool new weapons. As a Leo fan, I just always hated that. I know I just jumped ahead to the last episode to talk about the other Acolytes, but that's because I genuinely have so little to say about them that I figured I'd put all my thoughts in this little bit right here instead of making a big point about them again in the final episode review. I suppose there isn't anything atrocious about Joy, Adam, Tora, and Faraji, but they literally have no personality and feel like extras filling up space when they're on screen. Now anyway, despite the best efforts of the Acolytes, the Shredder's 5 Heralds get their hands on all the artifacts needed to resurrect the Shredder in episode 5, where they successfully kill the Tribunal and the other 4 Acolytes as they escape in a portal to New York City as the Turtles, Splinter, and the Ancient One follow them. It might seem weird that they went to the Turtles' home city, but there is a reason for that. They wanted to get revenge on Karai for pretending to be Shredder, now that he's going to be revived. Leading into episode 6, Nightmares Recycled, which doesn't exist. Yeah, season 5 has 12 episodes. It was supposed to be a half season, which would mean 13 episodes as opposed to the usual 26, but episode 6 doesn't exist. We go from episode 5, beginning of the end, to episode 7, Membership Drive. The story behind episode 6 was going to be a filler episode where we find out that Hun and the Garbage Man were conjoined at birth and they were separated by a back alley surgeon that left the Garbage Man in the garbage, that being his backstory. This episode got a big fucking no from 4Kids early on in production, so it just got scrapped. Honestly, that's another example of what I'm talking about. Who thought this was a good idea for an episode? Hun has enough backstory, and the Garbage Man is a character small enough that I never even mention him in my videos on seasons 1 or 2. Both good episodes, though. Especially after I saw Peter Laird talk about how meaningful the first one was to him and its depiction of homeless people, but that's another topic. I feel like this plot synopsis is so comically dark that it sounds like a parody. 4Kids agrees with me, so the episode never got off the ground. So since the episode got pulled from production, the season only has 12 episodes. Episode 7, Membership Drive, being the only episode that isn't super important to the main plot. Because of that, season 5 has another problem. There's almost no downtime. Now, the situation is urgent, I get that, but when watching the season it feels like a non-stop dump of plot points and backstory exposition. Having said that, episode 7 is totally worth watching. The plot is that the Justice Force is looking to expand membership and the Turtles go to them to recruit them in the fight against the Shredder. But at the same time, the EPF is going through the last of the Triceraton wreckage from Season 3 and finds a crashed ship where the Turtles last fought Nano in Season 2, who is attached to the Triceraton tech. Stockman bringing it back to examine it, and of course, Nano escapes and we get my favorite line from Agent Bishop.
I'm beginning to understand why your former employer kept relieving you of body parts.
Seriously, why is everyone so casual about this? I will never stop making a thing out of that. But by the end of this episode, we see how much Nano has changed in the last 3 seasons as he actually joins the Justice Force himself. Speaking of the JF, I noticed something funny about this group. If you know me at all, you know I'm a total fanboy of Batman and Superman thanks to the DC animated universe. So when I see Silver Sentry and Nobody teamed up, I'm all hyped even though they're both parodies of the real deal. But it's cool nonetheless. Once you reach the episode's New World Order Parts 1 and 2 is when things get real, as the original Shredder is revived with the intent to kill Karai for impersonating him. The Turtles are trying to save Karai because they were asked by Splinter and the Ancient One to rescue her because all 4 of them had the same dream where she got killed by Shredder and they couldn't save her. From now to the end of the season, expect a lot of fantasy shit that makes no sense, by the way. But I will give credit to the team for this. I was never super into mystic powers and such, but they once again do a good job keeping the action sequences interesting as we see all these different types of laser beams flying across the various areas. There are a lot of cool backgrounds and animation details in these episodes, like when Khan turns into Alien X at the start of episode 1. Shredder has the most interesting powers as he can turn a whole army into dust in seconds. The Demon Shredder is an interesting character. He has the same voice as the Utrom Shredder, but the two are different characters. Besides the one bit with Stockman, Shredder was never somebody who was particularly humorous. He's evil with purpose, like inciting a civil war on one planet to mine their resources when the dust settled. He was deadly serious. Demon Shredder, by comparison, is evil because he is. For him, it's fun to hear people scream in terror, and he pulls pranks on his enemies, making them think they have the upper hand, only to laugh it off. And this happens multiple times. He doesn't know Karai at all, so when she's all like, "Father, is that you?" I'm just thinking about what must be going through his mind. I have no idea what she's on about, but I'm just rolling with it.
My child.
Father.
You mortals are such fun to toy with.
He's unapologetically evil and loves it, which is interesting because there haven't been any other villains on this show like that thus far. But he's still menacing because even with the training the Turtles got, they're still barely holding out against the demonic hordes that Shredder keeps rising from the ground. Karai even fights alongside them. Despite hating the Turtles, she needs to kill the Demon Shredder as well. Dr. Chaplin makes his return to the show, having clearly been to the gym in the time since Season 3. His crush on Karai from Season 3 is also made relevant as the Shredder seemingly kills her as the Turtles take Karai to April's in a hasty getaway. The next episode, Fathers and Sons, picks up there as the group really doesn't know how they'll stand a chance against Shredder with his powers growing by the minute, which prompts Splinter and the Ancient One to tell a story about the toddler Turtles from a long time ago. So far in the past that it was before the Turtles even had masks. This is right after they were mutated and the Turtles were old enough to talk. Splinter procured the ashes of Master Yoshi and brought them to Japan to give them to the Ancient One. I love the detail when they're stowaways on the ship. We see them hiding from a guard and Mikey is covering his face with a paper. I thought that was cute. But the main reason I wanted to talk about this episode was in this otherwise good scene where the Ancient One first meets the mutated Splinter.
The Ninja Tribunal is to blame. They were asked to fight the Utrom Shredder and did nothing.
Yeah, you heard that. Apparently, even before the Turtles had ninja masks, Splinter already knew the Shredder that killed Yoshi was an Utrom imposter. I have a lot to say about this, because I was thinking that this might be the biggest plot hole in the entire show, but upon thinking about it, you could barely argue out of it. Looking back at the show, there's no evidence that Splinter doesn't know Shredder's an Utrom. He says to the Turtles in Season 1 that Shredder accused Yoshi of working for his enemies, which is true. We know that Splinter remembers his time as a regular rat, so therefore he'd know Yoshi worked for the Utroms. He harbors no ill will towards them, him being the one who tells the Turtles the Utroms are alright in Secret Origins Part 1. I was then thinking that Splinter would know Shredder was so impervious, but Splinter dropped a water tower on him in the Shredder strikes. It's fair to say that you would think an alien blob wouldn't survive that. Splinter was not present when Leo cut Shredder's head off and returned to New York as well, but that begs the question, if he knew Shredder was an alien, why would he not just say so before they went to his HQ? And why address him as a Rokusaki when you know that's fake? Splinter said he was going to tell the Turtles the whole truth about Shredder and Yoshi during the Shredder strikes. Maybe he still just wanted to leave it at the important stuff and the bit about aliens living on Earth got left out. The main issue with Splinter knowing Shredder was an Utrom is Secret Origins, of course. But upon a second examination, you still cannot say that he didn't know while watching that episode. The Turtles are super shocked by the reveal.
The Shredders? And Utrom? Ah! It's the prisoner, dude!
Splinter makes this face. What it means is up to you, but doesn't have a vocal reaction to Shredder being an Utrom. Earlier in the episode, he says this.
Those guys have been enemies for that long, and that means...
This is the same Shredder from 1,000 years ago.
Maybe this was his way of guiding the Turtles towards the inevitable reveal. You see, this is a way you can cover up what's established in Season 5. But you see how many leaps you have to make to even get to that point? If Splinter does not know Shredder was an Utrom, then there's nothing wrong with the storytelling in Seasons 1 through 4. If he does, then that shakes the foundation of the entire show, because Splinter has been withholding information the entire time that would have changed the course of the series. All established by one throwaway line. Here's how I would have done it. During Legend of the Five Dragons, make it clear that not many people know about Saki and the Shredder's origin. The Ancient One just told it to Splinter, who's helping tell the Turtles this backstory right now. Then, when you get to Fathers and Sons, have Splinter only refer to the Utrom Shredder as Shredder, because that would mean that in his mind during the flashback, there is no other one. And then have the Ancient One not correct him because it doesn't matter, Yoshi is dead. I hope you see what I mean. That one line changes the entire dynamic of the show. I can look past it when watching, because they don't make it a big thing and it's right at the end of the intended last season, but that's one of the reasons why this season's my least favorite of the original 5. We have complete non-characters taking up screen time and a big oversight like this affecting the entire show, taking away from a lot of good moments, even in this episode. I've always liked the toddler turtles, I just think them interacting with Splinter is really cute. Even showing that the Ancient One gave them their masks as a gift at the end of this episode, which is also a cute moment. The plot of the episode is that the Foot Mystics, unable to resurrect Shredder themselves because they're under the orders of Chirel thanks to the Heart of Tengu, create a bone demon to do it for them, but the toddler turtles lead Splinter and the Ancient One to him, stopping the plan. I like how we get to see how powerful the Ancient One is, and Splinter too. It's a pretty cool scene. I like that they keep the art design consistent here, Splinter holding his original pre-Season 4 cane, the lair being the one from the first episode that got destroyed by the Mousers. While you'd hope they'd be paying attention to that stuff, Oroku Saki's design from episode 3 was an example where they weren't doing that, so I figured it was worth complimenting. Like I said, this is a really good episode, but it's got 2 things I really dislike. We mentioned one of them already, and the other's at the end. To explain why the Turtles don't know the Ancient One until Season 4, it's shown that the Tribunal wiped their memories of this trip to Japan, and Splinter also never brought this up again either. The Tribunal claims that because the toddler turtles were able to see the Bone Demon, this means that they will watch these turtles with great interest. That, they do. At the end of the season's last episode, the Tribunal comes back to life and explains the whole thing. Now, I'm jumping ahead again, but it's once again worth doing. It's already contrived enough that the Tribunal comes back after, spoiler alert, Shredder's defeated. They claim it was so that the natural course of things was not altered, but they already did that by capturing the turtles and training them in the first place. But the real thing I want to talk about is how one of my favorite things about this show is undone a bit here. They explained to Splinter that the reason they never did anything about Chirel and let Yoshi die was because they already knew when Yoshi asked them for help fighting Chirel, and they said no, that by letting Yoshi go to New York with the Utroms, Chirel would kill him. Splinter would then be homeless and then find the turtles, the 5 of them would be mutated by the Utrom ooze, Splinter would train them, the 5 of them would fight and take care of Chirel and the other threats that face the Earth like the Triceratons and Agent Bishop's outbreak, giving them the experience needed to be trained to fight the real Shredder, once the Turtles unknowingly freed the Mystics on behalf of Agent Bishop. On the one hand, it's really cool to have a long-running story be recontextualized like that, but on the other hand, I think it's kind of a shame that the Turtles' various victories and defeats were all being watched and foreseen by the Ninja Tribunal. I liked this story because the Turtles have such an influence on it, but they're not the thing the story revolves around. It's a world with history and lore. If the Tribunal was simply watching the Turtles, that would be fine, but the fact that they knew Yoshi's death would lead to all this before it even happened, then that means the whole story was more or less destined to play out the way it did, which I think is infinitely less interesting. Of course, this wouldn't have been revealed if they just let the Tribunal stay dead. Speaking of would-be dead characters, if the Tribunal was literally watching and predicting the events of the entire show, then that makes the other 4 Acolytes even more pointless. The excuse of them being in it to make sure the world doesn't revolve around the Turtles is out the window because it now does. So they add absolutely nothing. I think the story is also more interesting if the Tribunal is actually worthy of the criticism Splinter gives them. It makes perfect sense. The Tribunal has stood guard over a potential return of the original Shredder for hundreds of years, but this fact has caused them to be blind to other threats like the Utrom Shredder, when their powers could have done a lot of good. The legacy of the Tribunal could have been that they were on the side of good, but ultimately their folly was their own ignorance and lack of willingness to help Yoshi and the Utroms. Good guys whose indifference caused the whole show. I think that's a way to tie the whole series together without going the route they did. But this is the story as it stands now, leading into the final battle. Well, first you have the next episode, Past and Present, where Chaplin tries to rescue Karai.
Yo, April, I found this bozo sneaking around back trying to break in.
And then they all team up and try to stop the Shredder's power with these keystones in New York, but that also fails, leading into the final battle and Enter the Dragons Part 1 and Part 2. Now, before I talk about the climax itself, I figured I'd talk about some of the nitpicks first. Obviously, this is the episode which brings the Acolytes back to life in time for the final showdown, and the Tribunal back for the final exposition dump, but I already covered all that. Another thing I noticed on this rewatch is that the episode feels kind of rushed from an animation standpoint. They said Mirage Studios finished production on Season 5 despite it not airing. With that said, Season 5 doesn't feel unfinished, but when I watch this episode, I do start to wonder. I mean, this shot of the Silver Sentry in the sky is ripped right out of the unconvincing Turtle Titan from Season 1. You can see the edges around him. And this shot from Season 1 is a different costume design for Silver Sentry, back before the suit had the black mask he currently sports, which looks pretty cool, I might add. But the point is that these few frames stand out more because of that as we cut to the new design right after that. We see close-ups of the turtles right before the battle, and it just cuts to this shot of Donatello that looks completely out of place as the lighting on him looks like it belongs in a different episode, and that's because it does. The People's Choice from Season 4. Only now they added him to this episode with the cutting process looking less refined than Sentry, and with his new staff layered over the old one while he still has the bandages from early Season 4. This shot of the Turtles in Shredder's lair is cropped out of the Turtles' escape from their cell in the last episode of Season 4, only with the new weapons layered over it once more. And while this isn't reused animation, Mikey's aura disappears here, and then this part of Silver Sentry looks really odd. I understand this is primo nitpicking, I'm just saying I noticed these things because, I don't know, I'm wired to do so. I wanted to get those brief nitpicks out of the way because of the fact that overall, I think the finale is really hype. The setup is that the Turtles form an alliance with all the heroes we've seen thus far, the Justice Force, Casey, April, Splinter, the Ancient One, and the other Acolytes. If they wanted it to be even cooler, then they could have brought back Usagi and the now friendly Triceratons. That would really bring it full circle. But in addition to that, Karai, Chaplin, and the Foot Clan will also be battling alongside the heroes with their new mystic weapons. But it starts getting really hype when the Turtles bring in Bishop, Stockman, and the EPF, as well as Hun and the Purple Dragons to really form an army against Shredder. The final battle has so many great moments to speak of, like how we see Dr. Stockman reunited with Dr. Chaplin.
You and I are a team again. Isn't it just so awesome?
Thrilling beyond words. This day couldn't possibly get any worse.
Or when Casey goes back to stay with April, who's monitoring the situation from the lair. To be fair, he's probably better there anyway, not like golf clubs and hockey sticks are gonna cut it against demons.
The only thing I love more than bashing some bad guy heads is you.
Oh, Casey, you big lug.
But then we just get straight up based moments, like Agent Bishop going combo mad all over the demon hordes. Like this part where he gets caught in the air but breaks free and does a sideways rainstorm from Devil May Cry on the way down. I thought that part was pretty dope. Once they get inside the building, the story really does become a fantasy madhouse. It's revealed that everyone who has ever called themselves the Shredder has a mystical link that Karai can use to weaken the Shredder from afar while he battles the Turtles. But, like Master Splinter has been fearing all season, the Turtles get murdered by the Shredder. Legit, Prime Universe Turtles just get killed off. But then, their spirits manifest the ghost of Hamato Yoshi, who really goes combo mad all over Shredder. Does that make sense? No, but it's pretty cool. When Karai weakens Shredder, he then summons all his demon powers to turn into a dragon, and then the Turtles summon their avatars, all of them dragons, as we see a Godzilla battle across the entire city between the Dragon Shredder and the Dragon Turtles, blowing through buildings like it's Man of Steel. And I have to mention the part where Dragon Shredder goes out of his way to eat Stockman, but bites into him so precisely that he's still alive when all is said and done. This guy cannot catch a break. Like I said, this show has turned into a madhouse, but I'm absolutely living for it. I think this is straight up hype, especially towards the end where Shredder goes back to his human form and the Dragon Turtles just rip him apart, manifesting Yoshi's ghost again, who goes in for the kill.
I will fight you to my very last breath.
This demon is your very last breath.
Master Yoshi's spirit fades one last time and the Turtles return to normal, bringing us to the ending where we get another classic Stockman moment.
And I'm not finished with you yet. It seems the pain will never end.
At this time, Karai officially gives up her bloodlust for the Turtles and decides to move on. Actually deciding to go out with Dr. Chaplin now, and the Ancient One is officially accepted as a member of the Ninja Tribunal.
I will miss you.
And I you, old friend.
It's a pretty conclusive ending. The Turtles just ready to move on to their next adventure. That being the note the show was meant to go out on. So, I hope after that long breakdown you can understand where I'm coming from regarding Season 5. I think it's great that we ever got to see it at all. It shows that the people behind the show really did care about the fans. And as for the season itself, I overall think it's good. It puts the characters in new situations, it elevates the stakes to critical mass, appropriate for the big finale. I mean, seriously, remember when the biggest threat on this show was the Mouser robot? This show went far, to say the least. It's epic, really, especially in those last few episodes. But I have no problem saying Season 5 is my least favorite because of the really dubious retcons introduced that I spent most of this video talking about. But the ride here was absolutely worth it. If I ever rewatch this show, it's not even a question as to whether or not I'll rewatch the final 12 episodes. Regardless of what you may think of what came after this, together, these 5 seasons represent an effort to bring back a dormant brand and do it justice in a modern era, with high-octane action, character development, and a dedication to continuity. Something I can expand upon in Part 8 of this little retrospective, but in the meantime, I'll just say this. If Season 5 was the ending, I think it would be a worthy send-off to the series, leaving it open for more plot, but leaving every character just about where you'd expect them to be. However, as we all know, this is not the last season of the show. There's still one on for 2 more, with lighter story direction and different art design. So we shall see how the next adventure of the Turtles stacks up in TMNT Fast Forward. Thanks everyone for watching, and I'll see you next time.